Hello and welcome to Cyber Life. My name is Ken Underhill, your host. In today's episode, we have a very special guest, Chris Kubecka. Chris has worked with a number of government entities around the world that she can't talk about, and she's been a cybersecurity expert for a lot of years now. But outside of cyber, Chris, I wanted to ask you, what are some of your hobbies?
Actually, there is. I make homemade wine and beer and mead. And I love doing it because I love mixing flavors and different types of yeast. So if I want a nice cider, I might use a champagne yeast. If I'm making, and this might sound weird, a tomato wine sherry, it only uses the liquid part of the tomato. I'll add a sherry yeast and age it with chips from sherry casks. And I love to share with friends when we can, again, be in person to do various hacker events.
Well, that's very interesting, Chris. I don't know if I would try that tomato wine or not, but maybe the next time we hang out, once all this pandemic stuff is over with, I'll take a taste and we'll see. So, Chris, how did you even get interested in technology and also in cybersecurity?
I was blessed, I guess one can say, with a mother who was in the industry. And she was both an operator and then a programmer for industrial control systems in the automobile industry for an old company called Digital Corporation, which got sucked up by Hewlett Packard. And using the knowledge rather at a young age, I got a bit naughty, as do some of us who have a bit of a naughty streak and aren't emotionally intelligent enough to realize the good and the bad that messing around with digital technology can do. So by the age of 10, I was interestingly busted red-handed in my school library hacking into the FBI with pigtails on a computer system with a modem, war dialing.
Wow, so I'm actually picturing right now in my head just a little kid, the FBI busting the library door, you got SWAT teams everywhere, and here's this tiny little girl just typing away on a keyboard and doing some wire dialing. So very interesting, and I would have loved if someone had recorded that at the time. So I mentioned, Chris, you've worked with a number of agencies and things like that around the world, but what are like the hidden dangers of cybersecurity that maybe mainstream media doesn't cover or people don't typically think about?
In the cyber realm, we're entering into this merging of cyber and geopolitics because systems are connected all over the world. Data can be transferred and or stored all over the world, and it can be juicy. Gone really are the days of old-fashioned spies where they have to go on location like James Bond or something like that and plant bugs and break into certain digital devices, because safes even are digital devices, and sometimes they're even IoT devices. That's kind of scary. And now it is, how do you get to the information that you want to get to from anywhere in the world? And it's also less expensive and less cumbersome when you have to come up with, say, fake identities to go on site. You can just click, use some script, boom, 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 and you're in. Or use an already existing exploit, because even the super spies still use the majority of the time existing exploits, because unfortunately, not every organization thinks it's very important to patch for the last 3 years. So rarely even spies use some sort of zero-day, because also it can be traced back to them. So they want to use commercial off-the-shelf exploitation. And because there's supply chain issues and lengthy contracts that cybersecurity might not have been considered, procurement's like, let's get the cheapest deal. What's that cyber stuff? I don't know. So they don't, check out their suppliers or demand those checks. So there can be funny little things that fall into geopolitics. And even if you weren't the primary target, you can just be that hop along the way for a nation state or a well-organized cyber criminal gang to get the information that they want.
And that is pretty scary when you think about it, how geopolitics is crossing over into cyber so much more than it used to. And it really endangers those that are just trying to do their job, just trying to protect data and other assets all over the world. So, Chris, there's a lot of areas within what we call cybersecurity. What area within there is kind of your passion? Like, what really, really gets you going?
Some of your watchers. I happen to like more of the offensive side, although I do think that the defensive side is much more challenging. I do like lots of exploitation, but I enjoy IT, industrial, IoT, IoT, and control systems because who doesn't want technology that can actually move things? So I find that quite fascinating, as well as being able to understand the backbone of our modern society just about everywhere in the world, because we rely so much on digital tech. I don't want to ask people to close their eyes, but after they watch this, close their eyes and imagine all of the digital tech that gets the water to your faucet, that powers the device that they are using to watch this, the built-in control systems, the elevators, which are now digitized, public transport, airplanes are flying IoT devices, space IoT, and new space IoT, as they call it. It's all over the place, maritime included. So think about all the different things beyond just your printer, or if you use a Nest or one of those Alexas. No, I do not have IoT devices in my house. And all of the ways that organizations and private individuals have tried to make life easier whilst at the same time increasing their vulnerability and exploitation.
All right, Chris, question of the day, challenge of the day. Can you explain ransomware to a little kid?
A stranger comes into your systems, and which you can think of as your house, and labels certain items as theirs and hides them. We use the technical term encryption, but hides your favorite things and tells you in order to get your favorite things, including your teddy bears, you're going to have to pay money. And that's what a ransomware person does, is they hold your favorite objects for ransom.
Awesome. So, Chris, if you were a magician, and of course I know you are, but if you were a magician, you had this magical hat, what would you want to pull out of the hat?
I think I would pull out a magical way to automatically secure systems without breaking their interoperability.
Excellent. And yes, that would really be some magic, Chris, to have that happen. So, Chris, when we're talking about cybersecurity careers and someone watching this episode might be interested in getting their start in cybersecurity, what do you recommend they learn? Should they use free resources? Should they spend a lot of money? What do you recommend?
Depend on money and time. Now, if you've got loads of money, go and get some great training from certain training organizations in kind of boot camp style, and also buy all the equipment that you would need to build your own lab, and then take some college courses. Now, not everybody has, I don't know, tens of thousands to do that. So if not, start out with using free virtual machines that you can run on your existing system. There's a lot of freeware, so you don't even have to buy things like Kali or VM Player or other things, or OpenVM. Take a look at the free resources, and there's one I love, Exploit Database, and also Old Apps. And those two places will have old pieces of software, many times connected with the exploit that's available in Exploit DB. And you can download those into your virtual machine and actually start practicing. And do some self-study. Attend, if you can, low cost or free training to get your feet wet to see which areas you actually like. Some people love networking. That's one of my loves. Some people love web application testing. Some people like hardware testing. Try a little bit of everything and see what you are more passionate about, because you'll learn it quicker. And also engage with the rest of the community. There are some egos in cybersecurity, just like any other field, but many more people seem to be willing to share the knowledge. So if you ask somebody direct questions, hey, I've been looking up this or that. Do you have any opinions on it, or do you think there's better resources? Most people are going to answer you and say, yeah, that's great. Here's a list of resources. Boom, and go through those resources. But talk to people. You don't have to talk to people in person. You don't have to make a phone call, but you can do it over social media. And most people that you contact will be more than happy to engage with you.
That's some great advice. Thanks, Chris, for sharing. So when we look to over the next year, or maybe even the next couple of years in cyber, any predictions at all? Any certain attacks that you think we're going to see more of out there?
One of the ways that I've been seeing this kind of go is we're starting to take worldwide privacy more seriously, and privacy is being associated more and more with cybersecurity. Um, However, some criminals are going, "Hey, company, we found this personally identifiable information." And we're able to access this, Excel spreadsheet or database or whatever. And the country that you operate in happens to fall under some sort of data protection regulation, be it in certain states in the US or the European Union or the Middle East or Singapore. And there's a fine associated with this stuff being exposed. So, how about this? We only take 25% of the estimated fine for it, and we don't tell anybody.
Tell me any tips that you have for the average viewer out there. Any tips they can use to try to stay a little bit safer online from a lot of these bad people out there?
An average person uses social media, especially things like Facebook. Try not to fall for certain types of quizzes that ask you to basically give up information about yourself or other people. Even things that look quirky, like, oh, your new nickname is your month and day of birth, or something like that. Or go ahead and check this your credit card number, to see if it's already been hacked. Don't do that. And try not to give up information about yourself or your loved ones, because it's pretty easy to do that. And not all countries use very strict security. I know that was one of my big complaints, and still is, with the US banking system, with these secret questions instead of just two-factor authentication. Try to use two-factor or multi-factor authentication on as many accounts as you can, because that gets rid of a lot of low-hanging fruit. And try not to recycle the same 10 passwords for everything. Get a password manager.
Now, Chris, before the show, you mentioned to me that I should change my password from the standard 123456. Why shouldn't I use that as my password?
Call this case I handled between ISIS, cyber terrorism, threatening to kill over 400 people, and that was the Saudi Arabian embassy's password in The Hague. So I would not suggest 123456.
Well, that is a little scary to think about, Chris, that was actually used at that level as the actual password. Any final thoughts or advice for the viewers out there?
Two things. On a bit of a later, note, sort of for the average person or someone getting into cybersecurity or are already there. You don't have to be a target by a cyber criminal group or a nation state if you are careful, or as careful as you can be. I encourage anyone in their jobs, whether they're in cyber or not, that if they see something, ask the question. Is this suspicious? This looks weird. And get to know whom you can actually ask if you see something very fishy. Because that's quite important. It could be something that's very mundane that just doesn't feel right. Many times the gut instinct of people is actually correct. There was an author, Malcolm Gladwell, who wrote a whole book on it called Blink, and how many times these things came true. So get to know who you can talk to go, this just doesn't quite seem right. And you never know, many times it'll turn out not to be right, but it's better to ask than to go, oh man, I wish I'd asked, and now, we're in all this trouble. Another thing is if you are concerned about cybersecurity and privacy, um, and you have the time, I definitely encourage anyone listening to contact their legislator at various levels and ask them, hey, how, for example, is the city council securing our data? Many times legislators don't think it's a priority unless someone asks them, especially more than one person. You would not believe how exploitable and vulnerable many smaller local municipalities are that just spill out all of your information and all of your grandma's information, which make them a primary target for cyber criminals.
Well, thanks again for coming on the show today, Chris. Really appreciated it. You shared a lot of good information and some interesting stories, especially around the wonderful password that was being used at an embassy. Be sure to follow the Cyber Life over on LinkedIn as well as on YouTube, and you can always check us out at cyberlife.cv.